Good evening. Jeff, how are you, dear?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Now tell everybody the truth. You're under a tornado warning, and if you spin your finger, that means you're out of here.
That's the symbol. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you see this, it's not me like usurping anyone's authority and telling them to wrap it up. That's me saying, "Hey, tornado, I got to get in the basement." So, yeah, we are under a warning. I'm watching the weather and texts from loved ones to let me know if anything is nearby. I'm hoping we'll be okay. But
Yeah.
hey, anyways, I'm still doing good though. There's no tornadoes yet, and I'm still doing good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been kind of a wild and crazy summer down here too. A lot of storms. I said to my sister today, Christine, I said, "Do you remember when we would just get a rain shower? You
Mm.
know, like a cloud would just fill up with moisture and then gently dump itself on your area and move on,
Mhm.
empty out, move along."
Yeah.
And now every time there's rain, it comes with this tumultuous thunderstorm,
Yeah.
hellacious amounts of lightning, just intense and severe and disturbing and destructive. And
Mhm.
it seems like every single storm, it's the new normal. But,
Yeah.
that aside,
Yeah.
it's been a contemplative, reflective week for me because I had, oh, by the way, classes in session. Everybody pull out your notebooks, put your cell phones away. And God, I had this chore to do. It wasn't a chore, it was a little project to do
Mhm.
this week. And I spent a lot of my time thinking about it before I actually wrote it, which is very typical for me. I'm sure it is for you too. You let everything percolate and write down any interesting sentences that you might be able to work with later and make
Yeah.
a few notes and then sit down and actually compile it, put it, into some semblance of order and create it. Um,
Mhm.
and so that's what I did. And the question that was on my mind all week was, as I'm about ready to turn 65 in October, think I'd remember my birth month. Um, what would I say to a younger me, a much younger me? What pearls of wisdom could I conceivably impart
Yeah.
from this perspective to impart to my younger self to help prepare me uh, for what lies ahead? And uh, I thought it was just too fluffy and frivolous, but I wanted to start it with, "Girl, you're going to love how you turn out." You know,
Mhm.
if you're doing okay, if you grow to love yourself throughout the course of your life,
Yeah.
stop being so self-critical and chastising yourself at every turn, and learn self-forgiveness and self-awareness, and you know just traveling through your consciousness, I think.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so all week long, it kind of, I I thought and thought and thought and thought about what would I say, what would I not want to give away, that type of thing. And I honed it into a brief, like a 5-minute note to self,
Mhm.
really a note to my younger self. And
Yeah.
I thought we could start the show tonight by by me
Yes.
reading it to you
I would love that.
and get your get your take on it.
Mhm.
Now that you know me so much better over these last few years, you've really, I think, really come to know me. Are you hot?
It's warming up back here. It was
Is
cool
it?
when I got back here, but now it's warming up.
That's because
So,
the barometric pressure is plummeting. And
mhm.
make sure you bring your sweatshirt with you if you have to leave.
Yeah.
Okay, just not for nothing. I've been through a few of these drills myself. Okay, note to self. You are a child at heart, pure and innocent, so easily wounded. Some will say far too sensitive.
Mm.
Don't believe a word of it. You will remain as you were born, sweet and gentle, a
Mm.
free spirit. The time will come when you no longer feel
Mm.
of ashamed of or burdened by your innate sentimentality.
Mm.
No longer will you perceive it as a weakness. In fact, your raw personal courage and stoic emotional strength will emerge unscathed by aspersions cast, some unwarranted scrutiny and harsh judgments made by those ignorant of the relevance of your presence on earth at this pivotal time in human evolution. Be impervious to the criticism as you go forth. It will have benefits impossible to foresee. Gradually, you will comprehend your worth, resulting in an unexpected role to play on the stage of life. Prepare yourself, rise to the occasion, as the forthcoming paradigm shift will occur during your lifetime.
Mm.
Intuition is your saving grace. Trust it. Self reflection holds the key to your ultimate liberation. It keeps you humbly grounded as you achieve milestones along a path less traveled.
Mm.
Once you have identified your purpose, all will be revealed, illuminating the journey ahead. You shall begin dispersing the messages you've received, and they will travel around the world to those who are willing to listen. Be brave, be fearless, rise up against injustice. Hold on, I'm so blind.
Mm.
Your righteous indignation is not misplaced and will be defined by your observant nature as you watch this foreign world spinning around you. You allow yourself to be offended by it. Get angry whenever justifiable. Suffer grief with grace. In so doing, you will express yourself fully and live into your destiny. Find yourself. It will not only inform, but will utterly transform your life experience as you become a formidable force to be reckoned with over time. When you consistently lift your voice up to the universe, eventually others hear the call. Find your own kind. A sense of belonging will follow. Yes, you are different, a weirdo by some accounts. Do not let the naysayers silence your song.
Mm.
Be the change you wish to see in the world. Be the light you seek. Be a beacon in the night. Take it all in. Absorb, then process all pertinent information that comes your way. Knowledge is power. Assess it, dissect it, study it. Be prepared to change your facile mind about it. Intellectual flexibility will prove to be essential to your own spiritual growth. With age comes wisdom. No matter the many challenges and obstacles you will encounter, remember, remain inherently optimistic. Don't allow yourself to get discouraged or caught in the trap of a societal expectation. You weren't born to fit in. You were born to kick down the sides of the flimsy cardboard box, not fit snugly inside it. The many cats you will rescue over the course of your life will happily reside in the box you'll vacate as you outgrow it. Concepts of reality will be suddenly and irrevocably altered by what you witness in your youth. Decades later, these experiences will be painstakingly chronicled. The singular endeavor, a commitment to telling your tale, will change countless lives and touch many hearts and minds.
Hmm.
You will look back and wonder how
Hmm.
and why it all happened the way it unfolded, but you'll willingly accept the outcome, knowing you made a positive impression. With clarity, you will see what good is done by telling the truth, coming to the conclusion that it was your destination and your destiny. Preconceived notions will be fractured as you begin to view your old reality with new eyes, and you will question your own perception of free will. Relax, enjoy the ride, set your intentions early in life, and they will guide the way. Stay motivated, be resilient, speak your truth, rely on instinct. Soul School is a place where the test always precedes the lesson. When you recognize this place as such, once you acknowledge that you have no control, surrender to it. Strive for excellence, but forgive yourself the inevitable mistakes. In spite of the shattered illusions and the disillusionment you will endure, it will all be worth it in the end. Remember, no one is getting out of this classroom alive. Drink the nectar, soak in every moment.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that was very beautiful and very moving for one. Um, Can I ask what prompted you to write that? Like, what were you feeling that made you feel prompted to sit and write that out? I'm just curious.
I was asked by a fellow author if
Mhm.
I would contribute to a book
Mm.
um, that was all about this subject, what we as adults would say to our younger selves,
Yeah.
given the opportunity.
Mm.
What could we do to help ourselves navigate
Yeah.
the treacherous waters of the river of life?
Hmm.
The complications of it, the incredible disappointments, the loss, the grief, the fear, the morass of emotions that we go through as first children and then adults, and what we do not learn to manage as children inevitably comes back to haunt us as adults.
Yes.
Um, it has a marked tendency, I think,
Mm.
to gobbledygook up the works.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
think you're on a proper trajectory, and then something in your past comes back and slams you upside the head
Yeah.
that you thought you had resolved, you thought was reconciled, you had pretty much put it on out there, it was
Mm.
and you thought properly in the past, and then up it comes to rear its ugly head when
Yeah.
you least expect it, when you're least prepared to deal with it, and when it's going to shake you to your roots. And
Hmm.
then so you and I have talked about this ad infinitum about what about the root shaking is
Hmm.
so important. What is it about the tiger that chases its tail?
Yeah.
That circular motion of of constant flux and chaos,
Hmm.
when what we're all striving to do all the time is to create some control
Yeah.
out of the chaos,
Right.
which all exists so that we can learn and grow and change and develop, evolve
Yeah.
into who we are now. We had to go through all that crap to
Yeah.
be exactly who we are right now, this moment.
Yeah.
When you start to look back and notice how much crap you've been through and how it has irrevocably changed your life, because it either taught you what you don't want, it taught you a skill set of how to cope with or to get around the obstruction, problem solving techniques that we develop
Yes.
as we mature, um, that have so much to do with the trials and tribulations that come our way
Yeah.
as we grow. And there
Mhm.
are, there's so many people in this world that never even have an opportunity to, my great niece Lucy was ripped from her mother's arms and drowned in a flood 2 years ago. And she was 8 years old.
Mhm.
She never even had a chance to live this life that so many of us just take for granted. And, we're careless. Sometimes we're reckless with it and just take it for granted.
Yeah.
And so many people don't reach my age. So many people don't reach your age. So if you have an opportunity to get to where we are, respectively, and then be introspective, be
Mhm.
reflective, be contemplative, to go inside and look around and see
Mhm.
what's going on in your internal soul school. I think that it is all to the good. It's beneficial.
Yeah.
Um, that ultimately it's a part of what helps us grow.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was beautiful. For one, you're a beautiful communicator, a beautiful writer, a beautiful soul, and I think that. But that was
Thank you.
amazing, and it touched me deeply to hear you read it. It's funny. I in the past I put it down for a few years, but maybe it's something I need to pick back up. But I was working on a book called Letters to My Younger Self, which I think is actually already the title of a book someone else has written, but it was going to be titled. I think the title I was going to settle on was Letters to a Young Evangelical, and it was going to be letters from me now to myself growing up throughout the process of being a fundamentalist youth into being a fundamentalist pastor and through all the crises that ensued and the faith crisis and the bout of atheism and all that other stuff. And I was going to kind of like write letters to myself, kind of talking my younger self through those years. And you kind of inspired me to maybe look back to pick that back up again.
Mhm.
But as you're reading it, it reminds me of reminds me of the Hegelian concept of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis,
Yeah,
right?
I love Hegel. I
Yeah,
do.
which appears in a lot of different forms. The Nietzschean story I often bring up of the camel, lion, and child, I think is the same. I think those three steps mirror those as well. Um, I think you can find it in the book of Ecclesiastes, where you begin with Kohelet, the teacher of Ecclesiastes, saying he's in this sort of hedonic, childlike way, enjoyed all the pleasures of the world, and then he's come to the conclusion that all these pleasures are meaningless, and then eventually he comes to the conclusion that, well, yeah, everything is meaningless, therefore just enjoy life. So all of these things, it's like in youth is thrust upon you, or to use another philosophical term, perhaps you're thrown into youth. You don't ask for it.
Plunge. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you don't ask for it. You don't give consent. You're just there. I mean, maybe in some cosmic way you do, if that whole kind of thing is true, but nobody knows if that's true or not. You're thrown into it, and you're there. You don't ask for it. You don't consent. You don't sign your name on any dotted line that you're conscious of, anyways. You just show up there, and life then begins happening to you. But it's happening to you as a youth in the only way that you've ever known life to happen, and so you're barely conscious of what's happening to you. You're conscious of it, you're aware, you're taking it in, but you've nothing else really to compare it to as a youth. So your level of consciousness is lower. And then you reach adolescence and young adulthood, and you begin to critique the experience of childhood, right? And oftentimes, it's not 100%, but a lot of times we come to look down on our younger self in adolescence, our older teenage years, and like in our young adulthood. We look down on our younger self as being terribly naive and how stupid you were to believe these things, whatever it was, whether it was the religious ideas you grew up with or the spirit things you thought, whatever. And you begin to kind of critique yourself harshly. And so that's thesis. Thesis is what you begin with. This is just what you know. It's just the thesis kind of. You start off with this idea. The antithesis is what happens when you begin to critique it. But then you reach a point in life where you look back and you synthesize those two things. That's obviously synthesis. And that's this. I heard the spirit of synthesis in your letter there, that it's you now looking back at all of those iterations of yourself, sort of sitting them down at the table and bringing them together as one. And that's been the quest of my life for my own self over the last decade, is to kind of sit down at the table with these different versions of myself that have existed over the years and make peace with them, and not just like them making peace with the present version of me, but me, present me, making peace with past versions of me, which sometimes I feel ashamed of, right? But understanding that you were the only you could be in that moment, right?
Yeah.
You could not have been anyone else other than who you are. And it's also you in the present. Am I going out because my screen keeps going? I just want to make sure if I am.
We can hear you. The video is freezing, but we
Is
can.
it okay? I'm sorry.
I figured you've got bad weather, honey. Just keep
kind of black here all of a sudden. So
yeah.
If I go out, I'm not doing this yet. I'm not going to do it. I don't want Bill to see the symbol. So far so good, but we might be having bad weather approaching. Anyways, and also it reminds me, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, though, the Stoic dictum that Nietzsche repurposes, amor fati, which means love your fate, love everything that happens to you in life. And that's really the secret. Actually, let me pull it up. I was just reading it earlier, and I think I have it bookmarked.
Yeah, we talked about this last week too.
We did. And he says, I want to he says, my formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that is, which means love your fate. That one wants nothing to be different, not backward, not forward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it. All idealism is mendaciousness before the necessary, but love it. And I found that to be true. I mean, I know as a child, like the things that your family endured, when you're enduring them in that moment, you probably want nothing more than for those things to stop. I can think for myself personally, growing up in the house that I grew up in, which we experienced a fraction of what your family experienced, but that fraction was enough to make me never want to experience it again. And in the moment when I'm up late at night hiding under my covers as a 13-year-old, I mean, you're supposed to be kind of toughening up by that age, right? But scared shitless, pardon my French, sorry French again, I'm always blaming the French, but just in my bed quaking, like literally running down to my parents' room and sleeping at the foot of their bed at 13 because I'm so terrified because of the things that happened and occurred in that home. Of course, in that moment, I want nothing more than for that experience to be gone. I don't want to be there. But now at 41, I know you thought I was 25, guys, but no, I'm 41. No, I'm just kidding. No, but now at 41, looking back, I would not change it, because in my moments where I felt most separated from the divine, it was those terrifying moments of knowing that spirit was a reality that kept me. It was the memories of those things that kept me tethered to the numinous, which ultimately gave me hope. And the experience wasn't a great one. It was actually a terrifying one. I mean, for all I know, it was a friendly spirit just trying to communicate to me in the only way it knew how, or it could have been something much worse. But like, even so, as a pastor who had fully deconstructed his faith, lost his faith, and found himself in an existential crisis, not knowing who he was or who anything or anyone was anymore, it was memories of those terrifying moments of being haunted, for lack of a better term, that kept me tethered to spirit, which ultimately gave me hope that there was more to life than what I was experiencing in that moment. And so, amor fati, love your fate. As an adult now, I can look back at even that moment and accept it as something beautiful that occurred to me in seed form in that moment that would revisit me 30 some years later, 20 some years later, to revive faith and hope in me. I mean, who would have thought that that's how faith would return to someone who had lost their faith, was by living in a haunted house, where I literally went to bed every night terrified of what was going to happen. What door is going to slam tonight? What shadowy figure is going to float in the room and choke me? I mean, who would have thought that something that terrible would 20, almost 30 some years later revisit me when I was being haunted by the lack of spirit
Mhm.
and remind me that there is more to life than what you think there is right now, and bring me back to a place of hope and faith. I mean, so amor fati, I love my fate. Even the terrible things that have happened, the hauntings, quote unquote, whatever they are, metaphorical or literal,
Yeah.
these are the things that later in life. Now listen, there's sometimes we're victimized in ways it's very difficult to ever look back and say thank you for. And I'm not saying that there aren't things that are just inexcusable,
Yes.
because of course there are.
Yes, there are.
Even so, even so, the growth that's a very hard thing to say. I want to choose my words carefully there.
It is, and I understand exactly
Yes,
because having been victimized as a child when I
absolutely.
had no recourse, no
Mhm.
escape,
Yes.
no upper hand to with which to control my situation or
Yeah.
my fate.
Right.
It was not something where I just said, "Oh well, I'll just accept this." Um,
Exactly.
what?
Nor is that what that dictum means.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Instead, decades of
Hmm.
processing, decades of
Yeah.
processing brought me to a place where um, I am absolutely and utterly victorious
Yeah.
because I survived it.
Hmm.
I survived, all the ramifications of it, all the intrusion of it, all the um, violation of it, the psychological, the spiritual, the emotional, the mental torment of it, not just the physical violation. So, it's so multi-layered. It's like
Yes.
phyllo dough. You see, you pull back a layer and there's another layer, and then pull
Yeah.
back the next and there's another. And it's I completely get what and I'm always mindful of that when I tell someone embrace your fear.
Yeah.
Well, fear serves a purpose,
Yeah.
and sometimes it will tap you and get you out of a situation before the worst conceivable thing could have happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen to it,
Yeah.
but embrace it and thank it for the times that it intervened on your behalf. Just my suggestion is just not to relinquish all of your personal power to it,
Yes.
and
Yes.
not let it dictate how your life is going to go, how risk averse you are
Hmm.
to, the general experiences of life. Anything can be taken to an extreme, literally anything.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. And I know that you want to choose your words carefully
Hmm.
because, having been uh, in situations throughout my life where anybody looking at it would have said, "Oh my God, that poor child, she's traumatized for life. She'll never get past it." Well, here
Hmm.
I am.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah. The thing you can choose to say yes to, and that's what Nietzsche ultimately concludes in that same essay. I believe it's the same essay. He's like, I wish only to be a yes sayer. Like, I don't want to say no to anything, even in my past. Of course, that doesn't mean there aren't things that I would look back at and be like, yeah, I wouldn't have, yeah, maybe I wouldn't have wanted that to go that way. I mean, when you're violated, when you're hurt. But the thing that you can say yes to is the fact that it was revealed to you over time, over decades, that you were way more than you knew you were as that vulnerable child.
Yeah.
And you know you're way more than you thought you were at the time because you made it. You are here. We exist. We're alive. We're breathing. Right? We're having conversations about this right now. It didn't destroy us. And that's not to say if it does destroy someone that they're any less,
No,
because it's
no. We were
our
just lucky.
experiences are relative to who we are.
Yeah.
But the thing it has shown me, whatever the experience was that there was a hell of a lot more to me than I knew that there was prior to that experience.
Yeah.
Prior to the experience, whatever it was, well, I was naive concerning the strength that resided within me. But
Yeah.
when I came face to face with whatever the quote unquote devil it was I came face to face with, something within me rose up that I didn't know existed.
Hmm.
And I found the strength, I found the resolve to pick up, to carry on, to do what I had to do, to be responsible in ways I never had to be responsible before, and to be something I didn't know I was capable of being. And to that, I can say yes. The specifics, no, I'm not going to say yes to the specifics because certain things are injustices that should never have happened. But I say yes to whatever it was that brought out of me who I now know myself to be. Because without that, and that's even part of forgiveness, to be able to look at something and
It
forgive
is.
it and to say, oh, yeah, and to say this symbolically, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Jesus, as a human being, does not become Jesus as the resurrected Christ without the ignorant actions of the Romans and the religious leaders of his day that put him to death, right?
Mhm.
In fact, Paul says in Corinthians that if the rulers of this age had really understood who he was, they would have never crucified him. So, like, their ignorance is what brings forth his true potential. And so it doesn't make what they did okay. The crucifixion is never in the Christian story a beautiful thing. It's always condemned as an ugly thing, as something terrible. And yet that terrible, ugly thing brings
Yielded. Yes.
it causes the fullness of who Jesus the Christ is to come forth. And those little crucifixions I've experienced throughout my life are the reasons that I've experienced those little resurrections throughout my life as well. And it's why I am who I am. And to that, I can say yes. The cross is always ugly, whatever it might be, but resurrection is always beautiful. But resurrection can't occur without crucifixion.
Right.
Yeah.
And therein clasp the hands of the darkness and the light.
Yes.
And one cannot exist without the other.
Yes. And that's the coincidence of opposites.
It
That's
is, well, it's the duality of 3D
yeah.
too. No, and I don't know. I haven't been around the universe as much as I would like. So, I haven't visited a lot of places where I know any different than the construct that is life as we know it on Earth, our 3D mortal life.
Hmm.
And as Earthlings, we have to, suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Yeah.
I mean, we're taking some dives into literature tonight. So,
Hmm.
there's another one. Um, we spend a great deal of our lives pinned and wriggling to the wall, um, trying to find our footing underneath
Hmm.
us. And none of us know the way. The
Hmm.
ones that are delusional, who, delude themselves into thinking that they have all the answers and dare to call themselves experts. Um, I would never laugh in someone's face, but I
Hmm.
am always tempted
Yeah.
to say, sorry, no such thing as you. Not
Yeah.
if you're billing yourself as an expert. There are no experts in this field.
Yeah.
There are relatively few experts in the world, and the safest assumption that any of us can make is that we know nothing compared to what there is to know.
Yeah.
We're babes lost in the friggin' woods, okay?
Yeah.
We're all trying to find our way. Uh,
Yeah.
it's why people think of. I almost hesitate to use the phrase spiritual ascension because it's indicative of a ladder that one would climb up vertically rather than traversing the space time continuum of each and every one of our lives, our existence as we know it, on a horizontal plane
Mm.
where we're moving forward. The moment that we just had is past tense, it's history now. The moment coming up has yet to arrive, so it doesn't exist yet until it arrives.
Yeah.
So in that moment, on that rung that we balance on our horizontal timeline of our own personal evolution and the evolution of humanity as a race, um, leads people to believe, using the word ascension leaves people to believe that some of us are higher than others. And
Right.
that's just simply not true.
Right.
You know, we are so all in this together. It's ridiculous. And
Hmm.
it's not until I think that enough thinking, sentient, prescient beings on earth understand the full ramifications of the realization of oneness that we
Hmm.
will make that quantum leap that we really must make in order to not just survive but thrive.
Yeah.
And it begins with heal thyself, physician, heal thyself.
Yes.
And then it's like all of you better heal your planet right now before it's unlivable.
Hmm.
And you bring children into the world who will bring children into the world that will have an untenable situation on their hands because their environment will be so damaged and ravaged
Yeah.
that it is no way to live.
Yeah.
And look at what's going on.
Yeah.
Look what's going on all around the world. There
Mm.
are extremes everywhere, all the time. It's incessant, it's nonstop now. What used to be the occasional natural disaster is naturally the next disaster that occurs next week
Yeah.
somewhere in the world. That, there are volcanoes that are exploding in Iceland while we've got an ice shelf falling off of Antarctica, which, I digress. I mean, the point of the matter is we have to get to a place where we communicate with each other on a higher level, on a
Hmm.
cosmic level.
Yeah.
More people need to experience the sensation of higher love, caring more about the everything than you do about yourself and your own needs, your own desires, being, coming to a place that's pure of heart and altruistic. And altruism is a rare, rare quality
Hmm.
to find in human beings.
Yeah.
It's there,
Yeah.
but it's rare.
Yeah.
Um, for obvious reasons,
Hmm.
our proclivity is, we've still got ancient fight or flight mechanisms uh,
Hmm.
in us, and survival of the fittest in
Hmm.
us. Who's going to rise to the top? Who's going to uh, be able to overcome life's many challenges and obligations and obstacles?
Yeah.
So when you look at it as a whole, I think the complications of life, I think the very best thing to do is to try to simplify it, bring it down to a common denominator that has nothing to do with money
Mhm.
at all. And what is the one concept that has uniformly appeared in all liturgical text, in all great philosophy throughout the course of human existence, as long as the written word has existed? One concept
Yeah.
central to humanity:
Yeah.
the golden rule.
Golden rule. Yep. Mhm. Yep. No, that's it. And as you were talking about it, I'm thinking, so I've been thinking this week a lot about chaos theory and about novelty and complexity theory,
Hmm.
which, to just make it very simple, essentially says that the more complex things become, again, just really simplifying it, the more potential there is for novelty to emerge, right? So that the more chaos there is, the more complexity there is. And then the more complex things are as a result of the chaos, the more potential there is for there to be novelty. So there's more material now for circumstances to work with to bring forth something new. So, like, one monkey with a typewriter might not write out the works of William Shakespeare, but like a room full of monkeys and a with monkeys with typewriters, given an infinite amount of time, they say will type out the works of William Shakespeare, because that's chaos, right? It's chaos, but given enough time, that chaos and that complexity would give birth to something novel, right? This time in the form of a repetition. But
If I could just interject for a
yes,
moment,
yeah,
let me give you an expression of chaos,
yeah.
creating uh, more complication on top of more complication. In the schools of Florida right now, as of yesterday, only the excerpts of William Shakespeare can be taught in English class because Shakespeare was too sexy.
He was sexy, I got to tell you that. But come
He
on, give me
was
a break.
sexy.
Jesus Christ, jeez.
I know.
What the
Jesus
hell?
Christ.
What the hell are we living in, man? Is
I
this
know. I know.
Soviet
Well,
Union?
let's just take a giant step back to the dark ages. Oh God. Oh,
Don't get me
so
started.
anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
mean. You brought
no,
up
no.
Shakespeare. I had to interject. I
Yeah,
did.
no. Jesus, man. but no, I mean, the more chaos there is, the more complexity there naturally is, and then when there's more complexity, there's more material to work with. I bit my tongue earlier, so pardon me. I
It's
keep
okay.
stumbling
I
over my
know
words.
that hurts like hell. I know
Yeah.
it does.
So the more material there is then for circumstance and time in the universe to work with to cause novelty to emerge and arise and to come forth. So when you think about human beings, I mean, we are a brutal species. We are a brutal species
Yeah.
of primate.
Barbaric.
We
Yeah.
are like any other group of primates. We go hunting, we kill, we cannibalize. We're monsters. I mean, we really are. The one thing we have that developed something novel that emerged in our species is language, because we seem to have traded body mass for brain mass. And so we developed language. We can articulate our thoughts differently. And that really was kind of like the magic pill that caused us to become something completely other. There's also something, so in the midst of the chaos that is the evolution of the human species, there's chaos and there's complexity, chaos and complexity. But somewhere along the way, something novel emerges, which is empathy, which is love, which is the ability to see the other whom you are about to harm as though they were yourself, or as though they were your child, or
Right.
your mother or your father, and to stop yourself. Levinas talked about this, the philosophy of the face, that if you have this faceless, nameless tribe that lives, over yonder river, and they're just these nameless, faceless monsters to you, well, once you look them in the face, something changes, because then you see yourself in them. Those mirror neurons are activated, and you see, oh, this isn't some nameless, faceless monster. This is a faced and named individual that is just like me. And at that moment, empathy emerges. In the midst of the chaos of evolution and us versus them and survival of the fittest, novelty. Out of chaos and complexity comes novelty. But novelty is simplicity. Novelty is an ordering principle that emerges, that is love and empathy, that causes you to be able to restrain and put a governor on all of those violent impulses that would have you, otherwise trampling these people under your feet. Now, instead, you see yourself in them and you stop yourself and you say, whoa, what if I were in their shoes? What if all I had ever been taught was what they've been taught? What if all I ever knew was what they know? Would I really speak of them and think of them and then subsequently treat them the way that I'm about to treat them? What if the shoe was on the other foot? Once you can empathize, that is a spike shoved in the spoke of Darwinian self-interest
Yeah.
that sends us tumbling over the handlebars of evolution, right? and
Yeah. Very. I like that line.
yeah, and novelty emerges, right? But it was chaos, and then novelty, because we realize we can't keep going on the way that we're going on, or we'll destroy ourselves. So maybe there's some kind of governing mechanism in the collective unconscious that emerges in certain times. I don't know. The late great Terence McKenna infamously referred to Jesus as a quote unquote flying saucer, and I think this is also interesting considering the times that we're in right now. And he used the terminology of his day, but what he meant was, hey, look back at the time of Jesus. We're nailing people to crosses. We're still a brutal species today, 2,000 years later, but we were far less, I don't know, artistic and elegant in our brutality back then. We're just a little bit, we're better at hiding it now. But he was like, and if you look at things, we were 500 years away at the time. Um, if you look at, mathematics and where we were heading, we were like literally generations away from being able to literally create the technology that could have taken us to the moon in the time of Jesus.
Yeah. Yep.
But here appears this Galilean preacher, in the dusty streets of Palestine, who is this object, this transcendental object that is there, that captures the imagination of 2,000 years of human history, and all of the best and brightest minds who would have otherwise been working on causing us or allowing us to destroy each other better. That's a very terrible way of saying it. More efficiently, instead become obsessed with whether or not Jesus is fully God and fully man, or half God and half man. Is he of the same being in essence of the Father, or not? Like, the best and brightest minds are now consumed with figuring out the metaphysics of this Jewish preacher who was crucified. And so he was like, there's a governing mechanism on the collective unconscious that whenever we get to the point where our technology exceeds our ethics, something emerges that, to use my terms, shoves a spike in the spoke of evolution and sends us over the handlebars. Something emerges that will capture our attention and put it elsewhere to keep us from going that way. And so he spoke of Jesus in that way. And I wonder if what's happening today, I don't know, even with disclosure and everything else that's going on right now, there's that part of me that's suspicious. There's that part of me that's like, what are we doing? Is there some sleight of hand going on here? My inner conspiracy theorist, which we all have one. You just should own up to it. We all have an inner conspiracy theorist. There's that part of me that's like, what are they doing? What are they trying to hide from me here? And then at the same time, I'm like, well, if they're trying to hide something, they're not doing too good of a job, because it literally seems like nobody gives a damn, even though they're telling us basically, hey, guys, there's aliens, right? And we're still obsessed with the Kardashians or whatever it is we're obsessed with these days. So I don't.
We're not ready. We're just not even remotely ready for this. Oh my God.
Yeah. No, and so it's like, I don't really know what's going on. I mean, I don't think maybe some people do, but I don't know anybody that knows 100% what's going on. But there is a part of me that's like, are we reaching that point again where that novelty is emerging from the chaos once more? The chaos and the complexity, right? Because everything is so chaotic and complex. Is there something emerging now, a new kind of novelty that's going to bring us back to another point of unity that takes our eyes off of what we're doing to one another and onto another something? I don't know. But it's definitely worth thinking about. But my mind has been fixed and focused on this for the last several weeks. And not only on the macro, but, always as above, so below in my own life.
Yeah.
In my own life, where there's chaos and where there's complexity, what is the point that it's all being drawn to? What is the novelty, the new thing that's being called forth out of this and as a result of all of this? And whenever I see it happening out there, I always tell myself, on earth as it is in heaven, as above, so below. What happens out there mirrors what's happening in here, or what's happening in here mirrors what's happening out there, whichever way we think that goes. And so there's something to be learned. And boy, I don't know. That's like another hour's worth of conversation to be had. But I don't know if you can share your thoughts on that in the last few minutes we have, or share something else. Yeah.
For me, one of my very favorite phrases, quotations, is "Be still and know that you are God."
Yes.
And though I alter the context of it a little bit for it to apply specifically to me, the only thing that makes any sense to me is that we are each a living, breathing manifestation of God consciousness, Christ consciousness, for source energy. You call it whatever you will, creator, whatever. That there is, I believe, some point of creation, and we are the creation, and we are the way on this plane of action. We are the way that the creator sees its own creation in action.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I think that that love is integral to that process. I think if not for the existence, the profound depth of meaning of love in human consciousness,
Yes.
we wouldn't even have survived to this point,
Yep.
because that level of brutality that you spoke of earlier is just like baked in to 50% of the population. Sorry, guys, but it's not a whole lot of women out there declaring wars, taking over countries, manufacturing, weapons to blow each other to smithereens. It's kind of a lot of guys doing all of this, and
It's not Barbie Land, let's be
it's
honest.
not Barbie Land. No, I would like to go to Barbie Land.
Mm.
Actually, I like that shade of pink. Um, you know, we've got a long way to go.
Mhm.
And it is, sometimes I sit here and I have these discussions with you, and I think to myself, I wonder if there's anybody out there that's watching this that's really tapped in to this higher consciousness where we tend to go, because we often kind of pull ourselves out of 3D and go 4D, 5D, and beyond in terms of the references that we make, and um, the visualizations that we impart for what the world could be like, etc. Are we tapping into a need, striking a chord with our viewers, or do they find this discourse just too high-minded, and it's just too much to think about, it's too much to take in, it's too much to absorb, it's too much to process, it's just too much when you're worried about, am I going to be able to put a tank of gas in the car this
Yep.
week? How many meals do I have money for in my bank
I've been there. Yep.
I know. I mean, so it's I see both sides of that.
Yeah.
I do. I just hope that when we gather each week, that we provide some sustenance spiritually and offer some food for thought
Yeah.
in this, our little hour-long class in Soul School every week, that in some way we make a positive difference in the
Yeah.
world. We come at it with the very best of intentions. We discuss what is of interest to both of us, but also looking toward how it will enrich or enhance our viewers' lives as well. Give them something to fall asleep on,
Yeah.
and maybe a slight deviation on the path forward, just a little detour. Think about this just a little different way. I wrote about that, coming full circle to the note to self.
Yeah.
Allow yourself, don't be so rigid,
Yeah.
allow yourself intellectual flexibility,
Yes.
because it really is the only way for us to grow as individuals, is
Yeah.
if we change. It is the only thing constant in the universe.
Yeah.
I've changed my mind about the same thing, I don't know how many times, back and forth, back and forth. Determinism versus free will. I don't know how many times I have advanced these concepts and developed my own new hypothesis that just happens to work for this situation, but it didn't work last year.
Yeah.
And with that, we have a few seconds left.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you didn't get hit by a tornado.
So far, so good. Yeah.
And, I just want to tell everybody, have a wonderful weekend. Pray for the people of Maui. Do whatever you can to help. And always, always be the beacon in the night and be the light you seek.
Yes.
We both love you very much.
And I really feel like I need to tell somebody you're about to get a new job, and I really felt it, and I felt like I was supposed to unlock that in your spirit. So I'm sorry, that was a weird way to sign off, but peace.
Get your job. Go get your job, baby.
Yes.
Class dismissed.
Class dismissed.